He thought he had rescued a helpless puppy. It was tiny, trembling and barely breathing when he found it by the roadside that rainy night. He wrapped it in his jacket, whispered, "You're safe now," and took it home. For months he cared for it like his own child, feeding it, nursing it, watching it grow stronger every day. But as time passed, strange things began happening. The puppy didn't bark, didn't wag its tail, and sometimes its eyes glowed in the dark. Neighbors whispered, his friends warned him to let it go, but he refused. Until one night when he discovered the truth and realized the creature he saved was never meant to be found by humans. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The rain came down in heavy sheets, blurring the world into streaks of silver and gray. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his wipers fighting to keep up. It was late past midnight, and the winding forest road was almost empty. The rhythmic hum of rain on metal was the only sound, until something darted across the road. He slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly before coming to a halt. His heart pounded as he squinted through the windshield. At first he thought it was debris, a branch maybe, but then it moved. Daniel stepped out, umbrella barely holding against the wind. Headlights cut through the rain, revealing a tiny, shivering figure lying in the mud. It was a puppy, so small it could fit in his palm, its fur drenched and matted, its breathing shallow. He knelt beside it, feeling its frail body tremble under his fingers. Hey, it's okay," he whispered, his voice breaking through the storm. The little creature gave a weak, almost silent whimper. Without thinking twice, he slipped off his jacket, wrapped the puppy inside, and held it close to his chest for warmth. He could feel the faint heartbeat against his palm, slow, fragile, but there. Daniel hurried back to his car, turning the heater up as high as it would go. "You're gonna be fine," he murmured. "I got you." The puppy stirred slightly, pressing its tiny head into his hand. Something about it felt strange, not wrong, but different. Its skin was smoother than he expected, its ears a little smaller, and its eyes, when they fluttered open, had a depth he couldn't explain. They weren't the cloudy blue of newborn pups, more like molten amber, sharp and aware even in their weakness. He drove home through the rain, every bump on the road making him flinch. The storm raged on, thunder rolling through the sky like distant growls. When he finally reached his small countryside cabin, he rushed inside and laid the puppy on a towel by the fireplace. The flickering orange light revealed its pure white fur, unmarked, spotless like snow under moonlight. Daniel dried it gently using soft cloths and whispered reassurances. The puppy didn't resist, only blinked up at him as though trying to understand where it was. For the next few hours, Daniel stayed awake, feeding it small drops of warm milk through a syringe. It barely moved but never took its eyes off him. There was something intelligent in that gaze, something that made him feel like the creature knew he had saved its life, and was memorizing his face. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon. The puppy, now wrapped snugly in a blanket, had finally fallen asleep, its breathing calm and steady. Daniel exhaled deeply, exhaustion settling over him. "You're safe now," he whispered. "You're home." Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, a bond had been born, one that would soon blur the line between love, loyalty, and something far beyond either. Morning sunlight streamed through the wooden blinds, casting soft golden lines across the living room. Daniel stirred awake on the couch, his back stiff, his jacket still damp from last night's storm. For a moment he forgot everything, the rain, the rescue, until he heard it. A faint sound, soft and rhythmic like tiny breaths beside the fire. He turned his head and smiled. The puppy was still there, curled up in the towel, sleeping peacefully. Its fur glowed in the sunlight, and its chest rose and fell with quiet calm. Daniel knelt beside it, gently placing a hand near its head. The little creature stirred, opening its eyes halfway. They weren't dull or sleepy anymore. They were alert, too alert for something so young. "Hey there, little one," he whispered, his voice soft, almost fatherly. "You made it." The puppy blinked once and made a faint sound, almost like a hum rather than a bark. It wasn't loud, but it sent a strange warmth through the air, comforting, familiar, and oddly human in its tone. Over the next few days, Daniel cared for it as though it were the only living thing that mattered. He warmed milk, built a small bed from an old sweater, and even set up a soft lamp by its side. The puppy grew stronger, but Daniel noticed small differences. It never wagged its tail. It never barked for food. Instead, it watched him intently, following his movements with those amber eyes that seemed to understand far more than they should. When Daniel spoke, it tilted its head, listening as if hanging on every word. At night, the puppy would not sleep alone. No matter how many times Daniel placed it in its bed, he'd wake to find it nestled beside his pillow, its tiny head resting near his arm. At first, he laughed it off. "You're spoiled already," he joked. But deep down, there was a strange comfort in its closeness, as though the creature's presence filled an emptiness he hadn't realized he carried. A week later, the rain returned, tapping gently against the windows. Daniel stood watching it, holding a mug of coffee. The puppy sat near his feet, quiet as ever, eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. He bent down, running his fingers through its soft fur. "I don't know what you are," he said softly, smiling, "but you're the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, man and creature shared a silence that felt deeper than words, a connection that had already crossed the ordinary, though neither yet knew just how extraordinary it truly was. Days turned into weeks, and the little creature grew faster than Daniel expected. What had once fit easily in his palm now stretched across his lap, its white fur thickening into a silky coat. But something about it remained. Different. Its movements were too graceful, too deliberate. When it walked, it didn't stumble like most puppies. It glided silent and steady, its paws landing without a sound. Daniel noticed the first strange thing one morning while making breakfast. He had left the fridge open for a moment, and when he turned back, the puppy was standing on its hind legs, front paws pressed against the counter, staring at the light inside the fridge. It wasn't sniffing for food, it was just observing, as though curious about the glow itself. When he stepped closer, it dropped down quickly, pretending to be innocent, curling back into its bed. Daniel chuckled uneasily. "Smart little thing, huh?" he said aloud, but part of him felt unsettled. Then there was the sunlight. The creature seemed to dislike it. It never played near the window, never rested in the warm beams that most dogs loved. If sunlight touched its fur directly, it would flinch slightly and move to the shadows. At first, Daniel thought it was just sensitivity to brightness, but soon he realized something deeper. Its eyes changed color in the dark. By day, they were a soft amber. By night, they gleamed a faint silvery hue, reflecting even the faintest light like polished glass. Food was another mystery. Daniel had tried everything: dog biscuits, chicken broth, even baby formula. It sniffed each offering politely but never ate much. It preferred only boiled eggs and milk, and sometimes late at night, Daniel could swear he heard faint sounds from the kitchen, a soft clinking, as if the creature was moving the bowl itself, drinking only when he wasn't watching. The strangest moment came one evening when Daniel returned home from the hardware store. The door was ajar. His heart jumped. Had someone broken in? He stepped carefully inside, scanning the room. Nothing seemed out of place except the puppy, sitting calmly in the middle of the floor. Around it lay 3 small objects: his keys, a coin, and a broken pendant that had been buried deep in a drawer. He stared, confused.
"How did you—"
he whispered. The creature tilted its head, almost as if trying to explain. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to the faint sound of rain outside, the fire crackling softly, and the rhythmic breathing of the animal beside his bed. Something about its presence both comforted and disturbed him. He reached out, brushing his hand through its fur. Warm, soft, real. But when he looked into its eyes again, he could have sworn, just for a second, they shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting not the firelight, but the moon. By the 3rd week, the small town had started to notice. Daniel's neighbor, Mrs. Turner, a kind but curious old woman, often saw him walking the puppy near the fields at dawn. One morning, as Daniel passed her garden, she smiled and waved. "That's quite a handsome little fellow you've got there," she called. Daniel grinned, adjusting the leash. "Yeah, he's something special." But her smile faded slightly as she leaned in for a better look. "Strange eyes," she murmured under her breath. Daniel laughed it off, pretending not to hear. As days went by, small comments began to spread. Kids whispered when the creature passed, saying it didn't bark like a real dog. One even claimed he saw it climbing a fence, not jumping, but climbing slow and deliberate like it had fingers instead of paws. Daniel dismissed the rumors. "They're just kids," he told himself, but the whispers grew louder, seeping into his peace like a chill draft. One afternoon, Daniel decided to bring the puppy to the local vet for a routine check. The clinic smelled of disinfectant and hay, and the veterinarian, Dr. Harris, greeted him warmly. "Let's take a look at your little friend." Daniel placed the creature on the examination table. It sat perfectly still, unafraid, those amber eyes following every movement. Dr. Harris frowned as she ran her hands over its body. Healthy heartbeat. Strong reflexes. But the bone structure feels unusual. She paused, gently turning one of its paws. No pads underneath, see? It's smoother. And these claws, and they're retractable. Daniel blinked. Like a cat? The doctor hesitated. No, not quite. She stepped back, puzzled, tapping her pen against the clipboard. It's unlike any breed I've seen before. Daniel chuckled nervously. Maybe it's just a mixed breed. Found it on the road that night. But her expression didn't ease. Mixed with what, though? On the way home, Daniel tried to shake the unease that had settled in his chest. The creature rested quietly in the passenger seat, head tilted as if it understood every word that had been said. When he glanced at it under the fading sunlight, its eyes gleamed faintly, not amber this time, but a silvery shade that sent a shiver down his spine. Whatever it was, he thought, gripping the wheel tighter, it wasn't just another stray. It started subtly, like whispers carried on the evening wind. A missing cat here, a vanished rabbit there. At first, no one paid much attention. Small-town life had its share of oddities. But soon the notices began piling up on the community board near the grocery store. Lost pet. Answers to Bella. Missing since Friday. Please contact if found. Every week. Another family posted a flyer, each one a little more desperate than the last. Daniel noticed them one morning while buying milk. The bright yellow posters flapped against the wooden board, the ink slightly smeared from dew. He stared at them longer than he meant to, a strange unease coiling in his stomach. When he returned home, his eyes instinctively searched for the white creature waiting on his porch. It was there, sitting calmly, tail curled neatly around its paws, but when it looked up, its eyes caught the light in a way that made Daniel's chest tighten, like moonlight trapped in glass. That night, he left the window slightly open for fresh air. Around midnight, a noise pulled him from his sleep, a faint scratching sound followed by a low rustle outside. He sat up, heart thudding, listening. The sound came again, this time from near the back porch. Slowly he rose, grabbing his flashlight. As he stepped into the yard, the beam cut through the darkness, landing on the creature. It stood motionless near the old wooden fence, staring into the trees. Its fur looked almost silver under the moonlight, every hair glimmering faintly. Daniel whispered, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" The creature turned its head slowly toward him, its pupils narrowing. For a moment it didn't move. Then in one silent leap it darted past him into the house. He followed quickly, uneasy but unsure why. Inside it returned to its bed, curling up as though nothing had happened. Daniel locked the doors, the image of its glowing eyes burned into his mind. The next morning, Mrs. Turner was at his door, her face pale. "Daniel, have you seen my cat?" "She didn't come home last night." He hesitated, glancing at the creature resting by the fireplace. It lifted its head slightly, watching the woman with a stillness that felt almost too focused. "No," he said quickly. "Haven't seen her." But later that day, when Daniel was sweeping the porch, he noticed something strange. Faint scratch marks near the steps, and small tufts of fur caught between the planks. Not his pets and not anything he recognized. His pulse quickened. He looked back at the creature inside, sleeping soundly as if it had never left. That night, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening, something he couldn't yet name. The missing pets, the silence of the forest, the way the creature watched everything. It all felt connected. He tried to tell himself it was coincidence, that his mind was just playing tricks. But deep down, a small voice whispered, the same one that told him to stop his car that rainy night. Something isn't right. The sky was ink black that night, heavy with clouds that hid even the moon. The wind howled through the trees behind Daniel's cabin, rattling the loose shutters and carrying the distant cry of something wild. He sat by the fire reading, the soft crackle filling the silence. The creature lay curled near the door, motionless, its breathing slow and steady. Everything seemed calm, until a sudden noise shattered the stillness. It wasn't loud, but sharp. A creak from the back porch, like a single step on wood. Daniel froze. He lowered the book, listening. Nothing followed. Then it came again. Creak, a pause. Another creak. The sound of deliberate movement. His heartbeat quickened as he reached for the flashlight on the table. Probably just the wind, he whispered to himself, though his voice trembled slightly. When he turned toward the creature, his breath caught. It was already awake, standing perfectly still, ears raised, staring at the window. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, twin reflections of something beyond human understanding. "What is it?" Daniel asked softly, but the creature didn't move. Its fur bristled along its spine, muscles tensed, and then, before he could react, it darted toward the window. Daniel followed, swinging the beam of light outside. For a split second, he saw movement near the tree line, a shadow slipping through the fog. Then it was gone. The creature pressed its nose to the glass, letting out a low, almost guttural sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Something primal, something warning. Heart pounding, Daniel unlatched the door. "Stay here," he said instinctively, but the creature was already out before he could stop it. It moved with blinding speed, vanishing into the dark like a ghost. Daniel ran after it, calling out, his flashlight beam cutting through the mist. "Come back." The light caught brief glimpses, white fur flashing between trees, a low rustle of leaves, and then silence. The forest held its breath. Then somewhere deeper inside, a strange cry echoed, high-pitched, short, and abruptly cut off. Daniel's blood ran cold. He waited, listening, barely daring to breathe. Moments later, the creature appeared again at the edge of the clearing. It moved slowly now, silently returning to him. Its fur was ruffled, eyes gleaming brighter than ever. There was no blood, no sign of injury, but something in its gaze had changed. Daniel knelt, reaching out. "What happened?" he whispered. The creature only blinked, brushing against his hand before walking calmly back toward the cabin. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The image of that glowing stare haunted him. Whatever had been in those woods, the creature had seen it, or worse, stopped it. The following morning, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, the uneaten breakfast growing cold. His eyes kept drifting to the creature, resting quietly by the door as though nothing had happened. Yet the events of the night clung to him like fog, the sound in the woods, the cry, the glowing eyes. He couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was happening that defied everything he understood. A sharp knock at the door startled him. When he opened it, a man stood outside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a forest ranger's uniform. His badge gleamed under the morning light. Dr. Alan Harris, Wildlife Division. The man gave a polite nod. "Sorry to bother you, sir. We're checking the area. Locals have reported unusual animal activity near these woods. Thought I'd ask if you've seen anything." Daniel hesitated. "Animal activity?" Harris adjusted the strap of his bag. "Yeah. Strange tracks, missing pets, even one report of a deer carcass. Mutilated. We're not sure if it's wolves or something else. Something else." The phrase echoed in Daniel's mind. He opened the door wider. "Come in. Maybe you can tell me what I've been seeing." Inside, Harris scanned the small cabin, the books, the fireplace, the faint smell of rain-soaked wood. Then his eyes landed on the creature lying near the rug. He froze. For a long moment, he didn't move or speak. "That," he said finally, pointing slowly, "is not a dog." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "I found it on the roadside. I've been taking care of it for weeks." Harris crouched cautiously, his trained eyes narrowing as he observed. Its posture, the shape of the jawline, the pupil structure. He shook his head. "No domestic species looks like that. It's unusual." The creature lifted its head, meeting Harris's gaze. The air grew heavy. There was intelligence there, awareness. Harris instinctively stepped back. "Those eyes," he muttered, "reflective even in daylight. That's not canine behavior." Daniel's pulse quickened. "You're saying it's dangerous?" Harris didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a small device from his pocket, a scanner. and waved it lightly over the creature. The screen flickered with static before flashing red. "That's strange," he said softly. "This picks up microchip frequencies or any form of implanted ID. It's reacting, Belin, but not like it should. Almost like—" "Interference," Daniel frowned. "Interference? You mean electronic?" "Possibly," Harris replied, his tone uncertain. "But whatever it is, it's not from any registry I know." The creature let out a soft, almost melodic sound. Not hostile, not fearful. Harris stepped back again, visibly unsettled. "I'd advise you to be careful," he said, heading toward the door. "If it's what I think it is, you might want to stay inside at night." Daniel followed him out onto the porch. "What do you think it is?" he called after him. Harris paused, looking over his shoulder. "Something that shouldn't exist in these woods," he said quietly. Then he walked away, his boots crunching against the gravel until the sound faded into the forest silence. Daniel turned back to the cabin. Inside, the creature was watching him through the window, still and calm, as if it had understood every word. That night, Daniel couldn't shake Dr. Harris's words from his mind. Something that shouldn't exist in these woods. The phrase replayed in his head as he sat by the fire, watching the creature sleep. Its chest rose and fell gently, its white fur gleaming faintly under the dim light. It looked peaceful, innocent even. But doubt had started to creep in, slow and heavy like the fog outside his cabin. He needed answers. The next morning, Daniel gathered a few strands of its fur from the rug and sealed them in a small plastic bag. He told himself it was just to put his mind at ease. The local vet, Dr. Harris, might have been cautious, but Daniel wanted scientific proof. He drove to the nearest city, an hour away, and stopped at a private veterinary lab. The receptionist looked up. "DNA testing for breed identification?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, I need to know what it is." She took the sample with a polite smile, not sensing the storm behind his calm expression. "You'll have the results in a few days," she said. But Daniel couldn't wait that long. He found himself checking his phone every few hours, pacing the cabin as the days dragged on. The creature followed him with its steady, unblinking gaze as if it sensed his anxiety. On the third day, the call finally came. The voice on the other end was tight, hesitant. "Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Raymond from Evergreen Labs. We have your results, but we're a bit confused." Daniel gripped the phone tighter. "Confused how?" "Well," the doctor began, "we ran multiple scans, mitochondrial, nuclear, and cross-reference sequences. Your sample doesn't match any domestic or wild canine species in our database. Not wolves, not foxes, not dogs, nothing." Daniel frowned. "So what does that mean?" "It means," the doctor continued carefully, "the DNA contains markers we've never seen before. It's hybridized, but not from known lineages. To be honest, Mr. Cole, we thought the machine malfunctioned. We ran it 3 times. A chill crawled down Daniel's spine. "So you're saying it's not a dog?" A pause. Then quietly, "I'm saying whatever you have there isn't supposed to exist." The line went dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly, staring at the creature by the hearth. It had been watching him the whole time. Their eyes met, and in that moment he swore it understood exactly what the call had revealed. Outside, the wind began to rise, rustling the trees. Inside, silence pressed against Daniel's chest like a weight. The truth was out there somewhere, but he was starting to realize it might be closer than he ever imagined. The days that followed were different. The air inside Daniel's cabin felt heavier, charged with something unseen. The creature, once small and fragile, was now taller, its frame lean and powerful. It moved with unsettling grace, its steps silent and measured, its eyes glowing faintly even in daylight. Daniel told himself it was just growing up fast, that nature had its anomalies, but deep down he knew that wasn't true. He began noticing small things first. One morning he found deep claw marks etched into the wooden door, far higher than the creature could have reached before. Another night he woke to the sound of footsteps, not outside, but above him, on the roof. He rushed out with a flashlight but found nothing. The next morning, faint paw prints marked the wet shingles, impossible prints that began in the center of the roof and stopped at the edge, as if the creature had leapt into the sky. The changes in its appearance became impossible to ignore. Its fur was no longer pure white. It shimmered faintly under certain lights, reflecting silver-blue tones like liquid metal. Its eyes, once soft amber, now shifted colors depending on the light. Gold in the morning, silver at dusk, and at times a deep, haunting green. Even its behavior evolved. It no longer sought food. It simply watched Daniel as if studying him, mimicking his gestures, learning. One evening, Daniel sat at the table sketching a rough outline of the tracks he'd found. The creature sat quietly across from him, head tilted. "You're not a dog," Daniel said softly, not in anger, but in awe. "What are you?" It blinked slowly, then rose, approaching him. Its gaze was calm but ancient, far older than any living thing should look. Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken. For a moment he could have sworn the creature's outline shifted slightly, like heat rising off pavement, its shape blurring, reforming, then solidifying again. The room seemed to hum faintly, a vibration just beneath hearing. Daniel blinked, rubbing his eyes. When he looked again, the creature was normal, sitting quietly as if nothing had happened. But the air still buzzed with unseen energy. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains, wind shrieking through the trees. Daniel couldn't sleep. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the creature by the window. It stood upright, almost human-like, its paw pressed against the glass as it stared out into the rain. For a brief moment, the reflection in the window wasn't of an animal, but something else. Something sentient. When the thunder crashed, it turned to face him. The look in its eyes sent chills through his spine, not because it was threatening, but because it was aware. Daniel whispered into the darkness, "If you can understand me." "What do you want?" The creature lowered its head slightly, almost like a bow, then walked to his side and lay down quietly, pressing against his feet. The warmth of its body spread through him, steadying his heartbeat. But as he stared into the fire, he realized one truth he could no longer deny. Whatever this being was, it was changing, and soon everything else would too. The storm had passed, but the night that followed carried an eerie stillness, too still for comfort. The air was damp, the ground slick from rain, and mist curled along the edges of the woods like silent smoke. Daniel sat near the fireplace, half awake, his mind restless. The creature was lying near the door again, motionless, as if listening to something he couldn't hear. Every now and then its ears twitched, its gaze flicking toward the dark window. It was past midnight when Daniel heard it, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. His pulse jumped. He leaned forward, listening. Another sound followed, a low metallic clink, like someone testing a latch. He stood quickly, heart hammering, reaching for the flashlight. The creature rose too, muscles tightening, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim firelight. "Probably a stray animal," Daniel whispered, but his voice carried no conviction. Then came a soft creak, the unmistakable sound of the back door being tested. Daniel's chest constricted. He moved quietly through the cabin, the flashlight trembling slightly in his grip. Before he could reach the kitchen, the sound grew louder, a click, then the groan of hinges. Someone was inside. The creature growled low, a deep vibration that rumbled through the floorboards. Daniel froze. From the shadows near the back hall, a figure stepped into view, a man in a dark jacket soaked from rain holding a crowbar. His eyes widened when he saw Daniel. "Stay quiet," the intruder hissed. Before Daniel could react, the creature moved. It was a blur, white lightning cutting through the dark. The man screamed, the crowbar clattering to the floor. The creature lunged with terrifying precision, its movements fast, fluid, almost impossible to follow. The intruder stumbled back, trying to shield himself. But the creature didn't attack to kill, it restrained him, pinning him to the ground, growling with primal warning. Daniel stood frozen, light shaking in his hand, every breath sharp in his throat. "Stop," he shouted. The creature paused instantly, as if obeying his voice. Its glowing eyes met Daniel's, steady, intelligent, waiting. The man beneath it was sobbing now, terrified. What is that thing?" he stammered. Daniel swallowed hard. "My dog," he said quietly, though even as he said it, the word felt hollow. Moments later, the intruder bolted for the door, tripping and stumbling into the wet night. Daniel didn't chase him. He only stared at the creature, still crouched near the floor, its chest heaving slowly. Rain echoed faintly outside, the storm's remnants whispering against the window. When Daniel finally knelt beside it, the creature looked at him, eyes soft now, no longer glowing. He placed a trembling hand on its head. "You saved me," he murmured. It pressed gently against his palm, silent and calm. Yet as the firelight flickered across its silvered fur, Daniel realized something chilling. The creature hadn't reacted out of fear or instinct, it had made a decision, and that meant it understood far more than he ever imagined. The morning after the break-in, sunlight crept weakly through the windows, cutting across the cabin floor. Daniel hadn't slept at all. The images from the night before replayed endlessly in his mind. The glowing eyes, the speed, the way the creature had moved with thought instead of instinct. He kept staring at it now, lying peacefully near the hearth as if nothing had happened. It looked calm, too calm. A sharp knock startled him. He turned quickly, hand gripping the doorknob. When he opened it, Dr. Harris stood outside, the forest ranger from days earlier, mud on his boots, urgency in his eyes. "We need to talk," Harris said, stepping in before Daniel could answer. He looked exhausted, as though he hadn't slept either. Daniel frowned. "You found something, didn't you?" Harris exhaled heavily and placed a small metal folder on the table. Inside were photographs, blurry yet unmistakable. White shapes caught in night vision, glowing eyes cutting through darkness. "We ran new scans," he began. "Your dog, whatever it is, matches genetic traces from a classified project that was shut down years ago." Daniel's pulse quickened. "A project?" Harris nodded. "A hybridization program, run by a private research company not far from here. They were experimenting with cross-species DNA modification, trying to engineer adaptive survival traits in animals." His voice hardened. "It was unethical. They lost control of the prototypes and claimed they destroyed everything. But..." He glanced at the creature resting by the door. At least one survived. Daniel's stomach twisted. "You're saying it's some kind of experiment?" "More than that," Harris said quietly. "It's not just animal DNA, there are fragments. Non-canine, possibly engineered sequences. The government sealed the files. No public record exists." For a moment, neither spoke. The crackle of the fireplace filled the silence. Daniel looked at the creature. It was awake now, watching them both with unsettling calm. "But it's not dangerous," he said finally. "You saw what it did. It protected me." Harris hesitated. "Maybe. But understand this. It was designed to adapt, to learn, to imitate emotion if it served survival. If it chose to defend you, that means it sees you as its anchor." He lowered his voice. "But the others, if any are still out there, they won't be so stable." Daniel's throat tightened. "So what happens now?" Harris looked grim. "Technically, I should report this. But if I do, they'll take it away, lock it in a lab again. You won't see it after that." He paused, eyes heavy with conflict. "I don't think it belongs in a cage. Not after all this time." Daniel followed his gaze toward the creature. It hadn't moved, but its eyes shimmered faintly, silver under sunlight, calm but alert. Harris picked up the folder, heading for the door. "Be careful, Daniel," he said quietly. "You may not realize it yet, but that thing trusts you, and that might be the only thing keeping you safe." When the door closed behind him, Daniel sank into the chair, his mind reeling. The truth was out, but it didn't bring peace. Instead, it left behind a single haunting thought. If it was created to survive, what happens when survival means letting go of him? That night, Daniel sat alone by the window, the fire long faded into glowing embers. Outside, the forest murmured softly beneath a rising wind. Inside, silence pressed heavy on his chest. Harris's words echoed endlessly in his mind. "If I report this, they'll take it away." The thought made his stomach twist. He looked toward the creature lying by the door. It was watching him, its eyes calm but questioning, as if sensing the storm within him. He leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "They'll come for you if they find out." The creature tilted its head, a low hum escaping its throat, a sound Daniel had come to recognize as understanding. He sighed, running a trembling hand through his hair. "You don't belong in a cage, but they won't care. They never do." A sudden knock shattered the stillness. Daniel froze. 3 sharp raps against the wooden door. He rose slowly, glancing toward the creature. It stood instantly, fur bristling, eyes flickering with silver light. Another knock, louder this time. "Mr. Cole?" a firm voice called. "U.S. Wildlife Control, we need to speak with you." Daniel's heart pounded. "They already know." He stepped toward the window and peered through the blinds. 2 men stood outside beside a black vehicle, flashlights cutting through the night mist. The insignia on their jackets confirmed it. Official, armed, and certain. He turned back to the creature. It hadn't moved. It was waiting for him to decide. "Stay quiet," Daniel whispered, his voice shaking. He opened the door just enough to meet the agent's cold stares. "What's this about?" he asked, forcing calm. "We've received reports of a wild hybrid animal in the area," one said. "You live closest to the sightings. Mind if we look around?" Daniel hesitated, every muscle tight. "It's late," he said flatly. "Come back in the morning." The agents exchanged a look. "Sir, this is a federal matter." But before Daniel could respond, a low growl rippled from inside the cabin. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. The men froze, eyes narrowing toward the dark behind Daniel. "Is there an animal in there?" one demanded. Daniel's mind raced. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "No," he lied. "Just me." The men didn't move for a moment. Then finally, one nodded slowly. "We'll be back," he said. When their lights vanished into the trees, Daniel shut the door and turned. The creature was standing there, silent, glowing faintly in the dark. He walked toward it, his voice breaking. "They're coming for you. I can't lose you." It stepped closer, pressing its head against his hand, warm, alive, real. And in that single silent gesture, Daniel knew what he had to do. He couldn't let them take it, even if it meant losing everything else. The morning came too soon. The sun barely broke through the heavy clouds, and a pale mist hung over the valley like a lingering dream. Daniel stood by the doorway, a small backpack slung over his shoulder, his heart pounding with a quiet ache. The creature was beside him, calm as ever, watching his every move. It seemed to understand what was coming. The air between them was heavy with unspoken truth. "I can't keep you here anymore," Daniel said softly, his voice trembling. "They'll find you. And if they do, they'll destroy you." The words hurt more than he expected. The creature blinked slowly, then took a small step forward, pressing its head against his hand. The gesture almost broke him. He knelt down, holding its face between his palms. "You saved me more than once," he whispered. "You've been the only thing that's made me feel alive again." His voice cracked. "But if you stay, they'll hurt you, and I can't let that happen." The forest beyond the cabin was quiet, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of crows. Daniel opened the door. The creature didn't move at first. It looked up at him, its silver-green eyes filled with something that felt too human. Sadness. Then slowly it walked outside, paws sinking into the damp earth. Daniel followed it to the edge of the woods, where sunlight spilled faintly through the trees. The creature turned one last time, head slightly tilted. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Daniel said the words he'd been holding back. "Go." The creature hesitated, then stepped backward into the mist. Its fur shimmered once, bright, luminous, almost ethereal, before fading into the shadows. Within seconds, it was gone. Only the sound of the wind remained, whispering through the trees like a farewell. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring into the forest where his companion had disappeared. His throat burned, his hands shaking. "Goodbye," he whispered finally, though there was no one left to hear it. When he returned to the cabin, the silence felt deeper than ever. The bed was empty, the room too still, yet somewhere deep inside he felt it, the faint echo of a bond that would never truly break. And for the first time in years, Daniel wept. Winter had come and gone. The valley was alive again, green hills stretching beneath a golden morning sky. The world had moved on, but Daniel hadn't. His cabin stood quiet on the edge of the forest, surrounded by silence that once felt comforting but now only echoed loss. Every morning he still brewed 2 cups of coffee out of habit, one for himself, one that stayed untouched. He couldn't bring himself to stop. He often found himself walking along the forest path where he had last seen the creature. The air there always felt different, colder, watchful. Sometimes he'd stop and listen, convinced he could hear soft movement in the distance, only for the wind to swallow the sound. The emptiness hurt, but beneath it was something else, peace. He had done the right thing. He had set it free. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Daniel stepped outside to lock the shed. The air was cool, filled with the sweet scent of pine and rain-soaked earth. He paused when he noticed something near the door, faint impressions in the mud. Not human shoes, not deer tracks. Pause. His heart raced. He knelt down, tracing the marks with trembling fingers. They were larger now, deeper, But what made his breath hitch was what lay beside them. A smaller print, delicate and fresh, pressed into the earth like a signature left on purpose. Daniel looked toward the tree line. The woods were still, the shadows long and soft. "You came back," he whispered, voice breaking. For a moment he thought he saw movement, a faint shimmer of white between the trees, there and gone in a heartbeat. The air stirred, and a low, familiar sound carried through the dusk. Not a growl, not a cry, but something in between, something he knew deep in his bones. He stood there until the last light faded, eyes wet but smiling. The forest felt alive again. Maybe the creature wasn't gone. Maybe it had only returned to where it truly belonged. When Daniel went back inside, he glanced at the untouched coffee cup on the table. For the first time in months, he picked it up, stepped to the window, and lifted it toward the forest. "To you," he whispered, "wherever you are." Weeks passed after that evening, yet the memory of those paw prints lingered in Daniel's mind like a dream that refused to fade. He often found himself standing by the window at dusk, watching the forest breathe beneath the golden light. Every rustle in the trees made his heart skip. He no longer felt alone, not truly. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human fear or control, lived a creature that had once trusted him completely, and in that trust, Daniel had found something greater than understanding. He had found purpose. Sometimes, on nights when the moon rose bright and full, he'd step onto the porch and listen. The forest would answer in soft whispers, the rustle of leaves, the distant echo of movement, a low hum that could have been wind. Or something else. And every time Daniel would smile because he knew their bond had never been broken. It had only changed form. It was still there, in the quiet, in the wild, in the heartbeat of the world itself. He began writing again, short entries in a worn leather journal. Not about experiments, not about fear, but about faith. "Love," he wrote one night, "isn't about owning what we care for. It's about protecting it even when that means letting it go. The truest kind of loyalty asks for nothing in return." He closed the journal, feeling peace for the first time in months. As dawn painted the horizon, Daniel sat on the porch with his coffee, watching the forest shimmer under the rising sun. Somewhere in the distance, a soft glint of white moved between the trees, there for just a second, then gone. But that was enough. He leaned back, whispering to the wind, "Be free, my friend." The camera would fade slowly on his face, the quiet smile, the glistening eyes, the light of morning washing over him. The forest, once shrouded in mystery, now stood as a living symbol of connection, wild, untamed, and eternal. Narrator, softly. Sometimes the things we rescue end up rescuing us. And sometimes love isn't about keeping what you find. It's about knowing when to let it run free. Fade out. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable true tales of loyalty, mystery, and love. Until next time, stay kind, and never stop believing in the extraordinary.